Okay, I guess it's 7 o'clock and so we can get started. So my name is Annette Dunzing. First of all, thank you very much for joining. This is going to be a good one. And I am your host today. Again, my name is Annette Dunzing. I am a physician researcher, sarcoma researcher at the Hillman Cancer Center. I'm sort of somewhat behind the scenes for most of you because I do not treat patients, although I am a physician. I am, if you're familiar with the cancer center, when you walk inside on the right-hand side, behind those locked doors where the security guards sit. And so I want to welcome you to our beer tasting tonight, and then later also give you a little bit of an overview what we do behind those closed doors. So before we get started, I have a few housekeeping issues to do. So first of all, please remember that your microphone is muted. You can do that on the bottom left of your screen. Please do feel free to leave your video on so that we can see you. Please make sure that you're in the speaker view, and that would be in the top right of your screen. There's a little icon that says view. You can click on there and just check speaker view. What that does is if you're speaking, your video will come on for everyone to see. You will find the agenda on the meeting invite and in the email that we sent earlier today and a few days ago. And before we get started, we would like to recognize all the survivors that are here today. So maybe you can all jump on the camera and give the crowd a wave and be recognized. Hi, thank you for joining. Really, we did want to recognize you all for your courageous fight in this disease, and also want to recognize you for your bravery and continued commitment to reach our ultimate goal for finding a cure. So let's celebrate all of you today. So this is our 5th beer tasting, and this has been so much fun over the past 2 years already, and so we keep doing it. So watch for the next one, I suppose. And we also want to say that Pittsburgh Cures Sarcoma, the organizer of this event, continues to grow as well. So if you ever want to help with our mission, I guess you're welcome to contact any one of us, and we will find something to do for you. Importantly, Pittsburgh Cures Sarcoma, for all of you to remember, is volunteer-led, so no money is spent on any employees, and all of your money is sure to be spent on research. And thank you to all the volunteers who helped organize today's event, and not only help pack the beer, but also deliver the beer. So with all of that out of the way, I guess we're ready to go. And I sent you over to Scott from East End Brewing Company to get our beer tasting started. That's what we have all been waiting for.
Thanks, Annette. I'm Scott from East End Brewing, as you can probably see right there on my screen. First of all, thanks so much for having me and for having East End participate in this event. I'm excited to pour some of our beers for you. Well, I guess you'll be pouring them for yourself, but I'm excited to talk about the beers that we have. I'll talk a little bit about the brewery and our background and who we are and what we do. But I figured since it's the first beer, we'd probably start with getting the beer into the glass. So the one we're starting with is the Kolsch, or perhaps more accurately pronounced as Dr. Dunsing would probably correct my pronunciation, Kolsch. How did I do? Okay. All right. That's a lot for me to carry around as an American. So we usually just say Kolsch at the brewery because we're lazy and we're busy making beer. So
Yeah.
Kolsch is a what we like to refer to as a beer flavored beer. There's a lot of beer out in the world right now made by a lot of breweries. We are one of 47 different breweries operating in Allegheny County right now. So you've got lots and lots of beer choices. I'm thankful that we've actually seen a swing back start to happen between all the hazy beers and the fruited sours and these outrageous beers made with breakfast cereals and cookies and things. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, so I'm happy to have a clear beer that is popular at the brewery, and like I say, it's beer flavored. So go ahead and have a sip of your Kolsch while we settle in here. So this style of beer actually comes out of Cologne, and if we were sitting in Cologne right now, we'd probably be drinking this Kolsch out of a 9 or 10 ounce cylindrical glass called a Stange, and there's something that they do in Cologne that's fantastic. It's referred to as Kolsch service. So you sit and you order a Kolsch, and when your glass is empty, they bring you another one without asking. And that continues until you go and put a coaster up on top of your glass to let them know that you're done. So we're just going to go with the one can here tonight. I'm not going to force you to drink 16 glasses of Kolsch at a sitting. But the idea is that it's a smaller serving. It stays bright and sparkling and chilled, so that every sip you take is as fresh as that first sip that you get from the glass. So yeah, cheers to some Kolsch. So as promised, a little bit about the brewery. So we are kind of the old farts in the Pittsburgh beer scene. We've been in operation, December will make 18 years for us. So I came into the beer world out of a previous career as an engineer working for a Fortune 500 company. Worked there for 13 years, quit that job and moved back home to Pittsburgh to be closer to family. Had my wife and I have had 2 young kids at the time, and it seemed like that was a good time to quit a perfectly good corporate job and rent a sketchy building in a sketchy part of town to try to put together a brewery to make beer. That was back in 2004. And things have evolved a good bit since then. It started out, it was just me. And I had no notion of ever having any kind of a brew pub or a restaurant or even any employees. I just wanted to be a guy in a warehouse making beer and delivering it to bars and restaurants. Fast forward to today, we're at in a 16,000 square foot building. The photo that's probably up on your screen there is our patio, our beer garden, which is a really fantastic place to spend warm weather. This time of year, we're transitioning to fire pits to try to extend that patio season a little bit. But we've got room for about 120 people outside and seating for another 100 people inside. And we do have a full kitchen. So, and we can chat about that later after some beers. So,
Yes.
Tell us about Kolsch when you experience it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I mean, I for sure appreciate you starting with a German beer, German style beer here. That's great. The Kolsch is kind of known as a thin beer in Germany, so it's kind of looked upon not so greatly oftentimes from the people that are not living in Cologne. But I actually do like it because I like its lightness, and yeah, as you said, it's like really light and spritzy, and I'm a lighter beer person anyway. Quick question though, like while preparing and reading up on the Kolsch, I read, I mean, this was Wikipedia and I don't really want to be any contentious or anything, but I read that it's certified as in like Kolsch can only be made in Cologne, like Champagne only in the Champagne area. So are you allowed to do this?
We are, that's a great question. We are legally allowed to do so. We may be irritating some people in a faraway land, but Kolsch we actually had a Kolsch event at the brewery a couple of weeks ago with Kolsch from 6 different local Pennsylvania breweries that were making Kolsch. And we did our form of modified Kolsch service. So technically it's a Kolsch style ale, which is a little bit of a nod to say we don't, we aren't in Cologne. But there are some breweries, and I won't name them, but you could walk in and like, oh, try our blueberry Kolsch or our sour hoppy dry hopped Kolsch, and that's upsetting to me as a brewer because that word means something. It should be this light colored, crystal clear beer with a lovely grainy note to it and a sparkling finish.
Yep, and I'm just looking at the chat, and someone is definitely more knowledgeable than I about the Kolsch, and that person also has a fairly German-sounding name, Christina Schön, and she said
there we go.
she said the brewery has to be in sightline of the cathedral to be a real one, a real Kolsch.
Well, we are in sightline of the cathedral in Oakland. Does that count?
So that
does that count, Christina? Probably.
I think that absolutely counts.
Okay.
I would let that count as well. Oh, Köstritzer, well, that's another expert there. That's from Eastern Germany, as far as I know, and the darker one.
Oh, I don't know that one. I've had Reisdorf Kolsch is kind of the gold standard in my mind.
Yeah, no, it's not a Kolsch. It's not a Kolsch. It's different.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not from that area either. It's just a different German beer.
Oh, okay, very good.
Look that up afterwards.
I will.
For some inspiration.
Very good. So, yeah, I think with that, I could probably hand it to you, Dr. Dunsing, to take the next segment.
Sure, I will take that for sure, and I'm glad that we only had the lighter beer for now because we're talking some science right now. So everyone is still nice and alert. So thank you once more for inviting me to do this event, and I was asked to talk a little bit about our research, which I'm happy to do, of course. So next slide, please. Before we get into this, though, I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about myself and essentially how I got from there, which is my lovely hometown of Hamelin in Germany, also home of the Pied Piper, although no rats are left, to here, which is the lovely city of Pittsburgh. And essentially the easy answer is, well, I took a plane. Next one. But the slightly longer version is that I did go to medical school in Hanover, Germany, and both Hamelin and Hanover are about where those lines intersect in the red little Germany portion of the map. That's in northern Germany. It's sort of not too far from Cologne, but yeah, not really too close either. So after graduating from medical school, I stayed at the Hanover Medical School for a residency in pathology and also finished medical thesis research on liver cancer, actually. And then I wanted to focus just for 2 years on plain research and was accepted for a fellowship of the German Cancer Aid at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School. And this is where I started to work on sarcoma. This was not necessarily a sarcoma lab at the time. It was a cancer genetics lab with a big interest in sarcoma. But at the time, something happens, and I will get into that in the next few slides in the sarcoma world that made me stick to that. So after about 5 years, I was recruited to the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine for a faculty position where I am an associate professor of pathology now, and that's when I started my own lab. And quite a while after that, actually, another milestone that I just have to mention is the founding of the Pittsburgh Sarcoma Research Collaborative, and also my close connection to Pittsburgh Cure Sarcoma from the very beginning, actually. So next. So today I want to do things a little bit differently and talk about one specific sarcoma. And this sarcoma is called gastrointestinal stromal tumor, short GIST. And I think it's really a nice story that there is and important to know about GIST. So why is that? Next. Because until about the year 2000, GIST was essentially your typical sarcoma. It was hard to diagnose. We did not have any specific diagnostic markers. It was even harder to treat. It was not responsive to chemotherapy or radiation. And then essentially around that time, something happened, like 3 big discoveries actually happened next. And now the scene looks very different. We know the cause of this sarcoma. We have a very specific and excellent diagnostic biomarker and an excellent targeted treatment. And all of this revolves around this one cellular surface molecule called KIT. KIT is the molecule that is altered by a genetic or by a single gene mutation in the cell of origin of gastrointestinal stromal tumors, which are the so-called pacemaker cells of the gut. They can be found from the top to the bottom. You can get a GIST anywhere there from your esophagus to your anus, essentially, most commonly though in the stomach or small bowel. So what this mutation does to those cells next is essentially it takes the brakes off. So these cells grow and proliferate uncontrolled, and that's what makes those cells grow into a tumor. Next. So if that wasn't enough that we know how GIST is caused, most GIST also express this protein at a really high level. And with this, we have a really specific diagnostic biomarker. So now we can diagnose those tumors really accurately. And if you look at the picture, this is actually a pathological stain of GIST tissue. And you can probably appreciate that most of this image is brown. These are all the GIST cells that express this KIT protein. And the pale structure in the middle, that's a blood vessel that's negative and is not supposed to express KIT. So through this accurate diagnosis, we now know that GIST is actually the most common type of sarcoma that is around. And if all that wasn't enough, next slide, please. KIT is an excellent therapeutic target. So its aberrant activity can be inhibited by a very specific oral medication called Gleevec. And the responses to this therapy have been phenomenal, really dramatic. You can look at this PET scan there, see this big back bulky tumor in the abdomen of this particular patient in the left image, and only 4 weeks after treatment, this black tumor looks like if it's gone. This only looks at metabolism, so the tumor's still there, but the cells are not growing anymore. About 85% of patients with metastatic or inoperable GIST really respond to this treatment. And Gleevec has really revolutionized GIST therapy. Next slide. So bottom line here is that it's really crucial to understand sarcoma biology in order to develop effective treatments, and it's possible. So that's really the main message here. So in the next slide, I'll start telling you a little bit about what we are doing. So I just said, well, just is all that great? And you might ask, you're still working on this? Aren't all problems solved? Yes, we wish. Unfortunately not. This particular treatment leads to incomplete remissions, unfortunately, and also to resistance, as many cancer treatments do. And although most of the patients, many of the patients do respond really well, as I just told you, about 50% of patients that do have visible disease recur within 2 years. Next slide. So this is essentially when where our lab comes in, and we have a comprehensive strategy to develop new therapeutic options. So we have this candidate approach where we look at how Gleevec actually works within the cell. And we have a screening approach where we look at large collections of drugs and trying to find one that works for GIST. So next. In a few little vignettes here, not going into details too much, I just wanted to show you how that looks like. So here we are looking at how Gleevec actually kills the cells. And we have identified a molecule. It's called H2AX. You can see the name there. You don't need to know anything about it, but it's really the mediator of Gleevec-induced cell death. And so we asked, can we induce this molecule in any other way? And we were actually able to find another class of drugs that can do the same thing, just through a different mechanism. And currently we're working really hard with our team here at Hillman, that also includes Dr. Burgess, who many of you know very well, to bring this drug into the clinic. Next. We also look at a mechanism called cell sleep or quiescence. So this is something that the drug does to the cells. It does not kill all of the GIST cells, unfortunately. And while it may seem not too bad if a cell just goes to sleep in the short term because it doesn't grow, these cells can wake up again and then lead to tumor recurrence. So we're actively looking at targeting this process as well, and have identified some really good leads that we are trying to bring into the clinic. Next. Another strategy is looking at existing drugs that are approved for other cancers or just other medical conditions. And those the strategy has helped us to identify a drug that kills Gleevec-resistant cells. And next, just to close up here, we also have found really very important leads in our drug screening approaches that we want to pursue further. So how do we go from here? Next slide. Again, as I said, first we want to bring all of our developments into the clinic, obviously research the mechanisms even more to understand the cancer better, but we also want to transfer our knowledge to other sarcomas that do not have that great treatment options. And currently we're looking at two kinds, leiomyosarcoma and chondrosarcoma, and we'll hope to, again, use our knowledge to find new therapeutic options for these cancers. Last, I just want to point out really quickly, we have embarked on a totally different angle, looking at quality of life and cognitive impairment with my collaborator, Dr. Ferguson, who may be on the call here, some of you may have seen at the walk this year. And this is just something that we do together that we also want to pursue further. So next slide, I want to thank everyone for the attention, and also thank my team that helped do all the work. Some of them are shown here, not all of them. Next slide. In a more comprehensive list, most lab members and collaborators are shown here. And most importantly, we want to thank all of our sponsors, including Pittsburgh Cure Sarcoma, that fund our work and without whom this work would not be possible. Thank you. Okay, back to you, Scott, I guess.
All right. That's fantastic work to see. I was holding on by my fingernails on the technical aspects of it. All I do is make beer and pizza. So when we have a difficult week at the brewery, it's all in perspective, right? It's only difficult. It's only as bad as a day of beer and pizza can be. So on to the next beer. We've got our Central Oakland. We kind of have an Oakland theme here going accidentally. This is one of our neighborhood beers. I'm pouring this into my glass here. Generally, when I'm pouring a beer, I'm pouring it pretty vigorously into a glass because I like to raise a nice head on the beer. And that foam is a large portion of the sensory experience when you're drinking a beer. So you want that big fluffy head on it. It actually knocks the carbonation back a little bit, which makes it sit in your stomach a little bit easier and really opens up the nose on the beer. And this one, I can smell it without even having the glass up to my nose. So this is a hazy IPA that we brewed as part of our neighborhood beer series. So we set out back in June of 2019, in the before times, as we like to say, to brew a unique beer for every one of Pittsburgh's 90 different neighborhoods. So this is actually beer number 67 of that series. So we're in kind of the final third of the set. So we'll brew a beer, we'll do a single batch of it. When it's gone, and we are on to the next one. We usually have a couple of neighborhood beers going at the brewery at one point or another. This is one that's certainly a very popular style. Hazy IPA, as I referred to it. As you can see, it doesn't have the clarity of the previous beer, and that is by design. There's actually process steps that we do to create that haze in there and make it stable, because the hop compounds and the way that we're using our hops actually bond to those particles that are in suspension. So that keeps the hop flavor up and high in the beer. It's also a very perishable beer style. The hoppier a beer is, the shorter the shelf life is for it. So the beer that you get at the brewery has never not been stored cold. It's cold from the fermenter all the way through our process, and that's to make sure that it's tasting its absolute best and absolutely as fresh as possible. So the hops in this beer are Centennial hops, which is and Citra hops, both from the Pacific Northwest, as well as a hop called BRU1. I think that's probably, we've got that. Yeah, we've got that on the label as well. That's an experimental hop variety. As new hops are introduced, it takes about 10 years for a new hop variety to go from the initial hybridization and planting the vines all the way to getting it ready for commercialization. So sometimes along the way, they don't have a name for it. So the BRU is just sort of a placeholder. We actually got some letters on this. Usually the experimental hop varieties are just 2384 or something like that. So we're happy with this one. That gives a little bit of almost a white wine note to it that I pick up both in the aroma and in the flavor profile. So cheers to some Central Oakland.
Cheers. So I have a question, Scott. So, well, first of all, that I think that's really cool with the neighborhoods. Great idea. But then how do you come up with a specific beer for a specific neighborhood?
That is definitely been a challenge, because this is beer number 67, and they've all been completely unique beers. For a while, we thought about like, oh, what does Central Oakland taste like? Should we make something that has some sort of a cultural reference or a flavor reference, or if you're brewing a beer for Bloomfield, should it use Italian ingredients? If we're, what does the Fairywood neighborhood of Pittsburgh taste like, or what should it taste like? after a lot of thinking and consideration about that, we decided that our heads were going to explode if we tried to do this for 90 different neighborhoods. So ultimately, it's completely random. So that was just embrace the chaos completely and just let it be what it is. But the cool thing about the neighborhood beer series, and this is one of those ideas that I had at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I sat up in bed and went, oh my God, we could make a beer for every neighborhood in Pittsburgh. And then I kind of went back to bed and I talked to our head brewer about it the next day, and he looked at me like I was out of my mind. But as we sat with it for a while, it kind of made sense. So each can, as you can see, comes with a map of the city with the neighborhood actually highlighted on it. And then what that did is it created an opportunity to make a deeper connection to Pittsburgh at the neighborhood level. So for many of the neighborhood beers, we didn't get to do it for Central Oakland, but for other neighborhoods, we do in-neighborhood beer releases. So we'll find a small business or something that's kind of interesting and quirky and weird about a neighborhood, and actually do a beer release in that neighborhood. So we did one in Greenfield. That's actually the beer that came after this one, number 68. We did the release in Greenfield, and we know a guy who was opening an art studio, and he blocked off the side street and had a food truck and a DJ, and it turned into this entire neighborhood block party. And we had hundreds of people in the street coming to this neighborhood beer release. And that was all great. But what was really amazing to me is hearing people standing around and talking, going, wait a minute, I think I know you. Don't you live on, I think I'm your neighbor. And people actually getting to meet each other at a neighborhood beer release, that otherwise didn't have that excuse to bump into their neighbors. So that's the wonderful thing about beer, and something that's always been fascinating to me is it's such a communal beverage.
Yeah.
I think it more so than wine or spirits. It's a beverage that people gather around and make connections with. So that's what we also try to offer at the brewery. We actually don't have any televisions in our space because we would like people to talk to each other, even if it's somebody that you maybe don't know.
Okay, yeah, I like that idea too. Yeah, just a really quick from the chat. Everyone really likes the neighborhood beer idea. Some of the participants have been to the Greenfield release and really like that a lot. So quick shout out from there. I don't know, did you say it when you started and how many you still have left, and like in a time?
So and we don't keep to a specific schedule either, because again, it's just too chaotic to try to manage. A lot of that is based on how thirsty people are. So we can't control how fast the beer is consumed. But we started back in June of 2019.
Okay.
So we've got maybe another year's worth of neighborhood beers to do, maybe a little bit more. But we've got something up our sleeves for what happens after that. We can kind of go two different paths with that. We can go out to the surrounding areas and do the municipalities, because that was one of the first questions we had was, hey, I live in Dormont. When are you going to do the Dormont neighborhood beer? I'm like, well, that's actually outside the.
Yeah, right.
But we'll get to you. We'll get to you.
Okay. Yeah. Wilkinsburg is being asked about.
Right. Yeah, we may need to do 91 depending upon how things play out over the next year. That would be an interesting thing to tack that on to the end. Is definitely something that we've thought about.
Okay.
Sorry. One more weird little neighborhood quirk. If you look at your label, this is like an only in Pittsburgh thing. This is the every rule has an exception. There's a little green patch here that kind of looks like New Hampshire. Anybody know, guess what that neighborhood is? That's actually the Mount Oliver borough of Pittsburgh. Not to be confused with the Mount Oliver neighborhood of Pittsburgh. So there's a part that's outside the city right next to a part that's inside the city. Both are called Mount Oliver. And if you go down the main street, there's like two different kinds of parking meters depending upon which side of the street.
Gosh.
One's in the city and one's out. So it's been a real wonderful education about the city. that I thought I already knew about, but.
Okay. I think Dar just mentioned in the chat that there's a special guest who I think would like to say something.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'd like to say something if you don't mind.
Kareem, yeah, sure. How? Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
You're
Uh,
here.
I'm definitely envious of everybody. Everybody gets to drink their beers tonight. They wouldn't allow me to bring the beers in here. But I did get all the painkillers, so I have that. So that kind of upsets the beer. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to just get on and just give a special thanks to this team of incredible people that I work with. That have been working on me. Dr. Burgess, Dr. Weiss, Dr. Holtzman, Dr. Christie. This is my fourth sarcoma extraction. I woke up this morning with a cancer in my body, and today I don't have it.
Thanks for saying hi.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that you're here. I was scrolling through the participants and I did see you there in your hospital bed, and I had already wondered who that might be. So thanks for coming on and saying something.
Super high. Are you
Oh, yeah, I was just talking to people on the call here. That's why
okay.
I got emotional for a second.
Okay.
And the wonderful nurses here, of course, Nurse Shannon is here also, but yeah, of course, the nursing staff has always been great here too. So anyway, I just wanted to say a special thanks, and this is a great program that you guys do with the walks and the beer tasting and everything, and I'm glad to be able to participate in it. So keep up the good work. Yeah.
We are really looking forward to seeing you do better than today or yesterday again, like today, at least without your sarcoma. Everyone is saying hi to you in the chat. You can probably see some of the best wishes here, including Dr. Burgess and Dr. Holtzman and all of your care team. We are all pulling for you, so hopefully you'll be back out of that room. Really
Tomorrow will be better, and the day after that will be better than the previous day. So,
all right.
It's
We'll have a beer waiting for you at the end of it all.
There you go. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, Rod. Love you too, bud.
Okay, so that's Central Oakland. So let's see what's next on our. We're heading to a survivor story now. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Hi, my name is Lynn. I'm a 4.5-year cancer survivor. My tumor was a GIST tumor, a gastrointestinal stromal tumor. I first realized that something was not right at all when my girls and I went on a trip to New York City after eating at a really good little Irish pub. I got severe abdominal pain. From that point on, just continued to get worse. I couldn't eat even a couple bites without having severe pain. I actually first had gone back to work thinking it was not anything big, and then went to see my PCP, who then sent me for a CT scan. When I had my scan, I had a large tumor in my stomach, and so I ended up getting referred into Dr. Holtzman, and he basically told me he thought that my tumor would be of the type that was slower growing, and that I would be able to get it removed, but that I needed to see Dr. Burgess, who I then met after that visit. So I was set up for surgery and went in 5 weeks after I was initially diagnosed.
My name is Matthew Holtzman, and I'm a surgical oncologist here at the Hillman Cancer Center. Lynn had a gastric GIST, which is the most common place for a GIST to grow. There's about 5,000 gastrointestinal stromal tumors per year in America, and the vast majority of them are in the stomach. So what we're able to do usually is go in laparoscopically, and we're able to staple off that portion of the stomach, freeing up and removing the tumor through smaller incisions. And that's exactly how we met and operated on Lynn.
At first, when I was diagnosed, I hadn't told my girls. They were both involved with college at the time. My girls were wonderful in terms of support during this time. We have some really great friends and that came, you know, and stood by us the whole time. The surgery actually went really well. I was not feeling well when I went in. I had continued to work up until the point that I had my surgery. At the time, I was working as a pediatric critical care at Children's Hospital. I float between all of the critical care units in the emergency room. Everybody's saying, "I bet you're dreading this." And I said, "No, I'm so ready. I just wanted to move forward and get to feeling better again." After my surgery was all done, I had to wait for the pathology to come back. For me, once my pathology came back, I was able to only take that medicine once a day. And at this point, I remain on imatinib, mesylate, and I'm doing very well.
After we removed the gastrointestinal stromal tumor, we saw that there were features of her tumor that made her at higher risk. In the past, before 20 years ago, all we had as treatment was surgery. Now, through research, we were able to identify certain action proteins and mechanisms in this tumor that we could take advantage of with targeted therapies. With Lynn, we were able to identify that she was at higher risk for recurrence, and we were able to do a combined approach, surgery and medical therapy, to decrease her chance of recurrence, extend her survival, and give her a better chance at cure.
Once I got through that sort of piece of things, I had also been in school at the time. I somehow survived through school and thought at one point I wasn't going to be able to finish, but I had already spent too much time and energy working towards my master's degree, and I didn't want to leave that unfinished. And graduation was in August of 2019. I heard about Pittsburgh Cure Sarcoma through Dr. Burgess and her staff. What I learned from having done the walk these past couple of years is that there wasn't much support for sarcoma research out there at all, nor was there funding available for this type of research. So whatever I can do to help somebody else get to where they're going and support the research to find new ways to treat people or cure this type of cancer, we'll do whatever we can.
So thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing your story. That was very moving. And hello for this evening from my side. Thank you for joining.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course. I mean, you were going through something here, like joining us while being on vacation, and actually
So cheers to vacation, right?
yeah, that's right. Cheers to everyone who
Surrounded
was
by
joining
people.
you there too.
Right.
Thanks for being there with Lynn. That's great. Yeah, so I think, yeah, we all enjoyed hearing your story and what you went through. And I'm not sure if you want to share anything in addition to that right now with us.
Oh, I mean, I guess I am so appreciative of all of the work that all of you do every day. You know, I think sometimes that doesn't go, it just doesn't get noticed as much as we all would like it to. We're, you know, the behind the scenes things really mean a lot I'm currently unmuted. My husband is over there making a lot of racket, sorry. But anyway, we appreciate all that you guys do from start to finish. And, you know, I wouldn't be here. I don't know if I would be here today, you know, talking to you guys if it wasn't for your work and Dr. Dunsing and Dr. Burgess and Dr. Holtzman, like all of you. So all of us appreciate it greatly and thank you for what you do. So I will say that for sure.
Of course, yeah, that's our job. And I mean, I will want to add also, that's something what gets me going also, to see you as well as all the other patients. And with our work in the lab, although I don't treat any patients personally, although being a doctor, knowing that my help hopefully will, my work will help the patients directly, and the contact to you keeps me going in the lab all the time. I had just a quick question for you. You did touch on how your role in the medical field kind of influenced how you were going into your surgery. So I think we don't really need to touch on that a lot more, but so knowing what we talked about beforehand, and also knowing that wanting to give a little bit more information about the drug, about Gleevec. This is different for all the other sarcomas patients and survivors out there from your general chemotherapy drug, in that, and I mentioned that really quickly, that it's a pill, it's an oral drug, you take a pill every day. But in case of Lynn, someone that has a tumor that has a high risk for recurrence, or someone that maybe even cannot be operated on, you have to take that medication every day of your life. So what is your take on that?
So it's funny that you say that, because right here it is. I just ate dinner. That's when I take mine. And, you know, the good news is for me is that it doesn't involve, it's a little less complicated in a whole lot of ways than many patients have to deal with. So instead of having a port and having to have IV chemo, which doesn't work for this, that piece of things, when I learned that piece of information, was pretty scary to me, because then I thought, what is going to happen if there's nothing to treat me as as many of us knew it. And we knew that there were other things out there, but, you know, was there going to be something that would work? In my eyes, I'm very fortunate. You know, this was a breakthrough in the research that has been done in the past, you know, really 20 years, that has been an incredible breakthrough for us. It was a drug that was out there and being used in other places, and you can speak more to that. But it's an easy thing for me to do every day. I just have to be consistent about it. I'm fortunate that for the type of genetic mutation that is present or was present in my tumor, that I do one dose a day, and that's it. I typically do it at dinner time, sort of sandwich in between my dinner and my dessert. So for the most part, it doesn't cause me any major issues, you know, to be honest. So I feel that I'm very fortunate in that regard, and I can pretty much go about my daily business and lead a productive, wonderful quality of life with this medication and the efforts that you guys have made. So that's the one thing I did want to say. Do you have any other questions for me?
I think the next thing is to say cheers to your journey, and hope that everything will just keep as it is, keep going as it is. Okay, so I give the mic back to Scott for our third beer.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful story, Lynn. I'm so happy for you. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
So our next beer is our Britsburg Ale. This is a beer that we brew every year for the Britsburg celebration. If you're not aware, there's a kind of a grassroots collection of Anglophiles or British focused individuals in the Pittsburgh area, and every year for I think they've been doing it for maybe the last 6 or 7 years. They'll do a week-long festival of all things British in Pittsburgh. And so we brew the commemorative beer for that. And it's a different beer every year, part of embracing that chaos we talked about before. It's usually something British influenced. We've done Scottish ales, we've done English bitters, ESBs. We did an old ale last year, and this year it's a London porter. So we've stepped the alcohol down a little bit from the last beer. This one sits at 5.1%. Dark and roasty, really perfect for the change of seasons that we've been seeing this week. I absolutely love a lower alcohol roasty beer like this in colder weather. And it's a time of year when usually beers of this appearance are usually big 9% hitters. And I'm in it for the long haul. I'd like to have more than one glass of beer, because if I'm drinking a big strong one, I'm usually done after one. It's referred to as a London porter. Porter has an interesting bit of history about it. It's actually the world's first industrialized beer style. So it was a style that was that took off in the UK, and the production of it was all anybody drank at all, and it was again before the time of light colored beer, before Pilsner, before we had that malt making capability to be able to produce those lighter colored beers. Porter was what it was. And I've read historical accounts of vessels that were made of wood that were actually larger than beer tanks used by the giant producers of beer in the US today. So bigger than the tanks that are being used at Budweiser. If you can imagine a vessel like that made out of wood. That's fascinating to me, and of course that also comes with all sorts of stories of those vessels failing and rupturing, and a giant tank of beer overtaking a small town and basically filling the streets with foam while people were trying to get away from it. We're just going to try to keep it in the glass here for now, and a little more under control. But yeah, this is our Britsburg Ale. So cheers. We did have a question in the chat about the last beer. The question was about hops being a preservative. Historically, they were a preservative in beer and used in comparatively small amounts. But the idea evolved, and the hops weren't really a flavor component when they were used in a preservative fashion. They were in a very small amount, and it was enough to offer some preservation to basically the rest of the beer. Today, in a beer like Central Oakland, the hopping rate is so massive; it's easily 100 times what was historically common, or even in a beer like the London Porter, easily 100 times the amount of hops per barrel. And so then the weird irony there is that the hops themselves are perishable, and so the flavor that comes from the hops or more perishable than the base beer ever was. So we have something that started out to be a preservative. We decided we'd like the taste of it, and now it's become like a vulnerability in the beer. So hoppier styles, you definitely want to find them fresh. Check the code dates on the bottom of cans if you're buying beer at the store. If you're drinking something hoppy, it's usually freshness is really going to be key in terms of getting something that you're wanting to be drinking.
All right. I think that were great concluding words, and I guess we can now move over to Dr. Goodman.
Sounds good.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you're all enjoying this. From the board, reports that in 2022, we granted $237,900 in support of 8 research projects and the Tissue Bank and Sarcoma Registry. In addition, we funded the sarcoma funds at Hillman Cancer Center and started a sarcoma fund at the Allegheny Health Network. So far this year, we have funded the Tissue Bank and Sarcoma Registry and the continuation of one project that was ongoing for a total of $57,500. We have $210,000 available at this time for grants. The Medical Advisory Committee is currently reviewing 5 grant applications that will be reported back to the board probably at the end of the month. We have committed, to funding both the Hillman Sarcoma Fund and the AHN Sarcoma Fund once again this year, knowing that those funds are being directly used by our researchers in both institutions for sarcoma research. 2023 promises to be an exciting year. This will be the year that we surpass $2 million in grants from Pittsburgh Cure Sarcoma from its inception in 2011 to now. It's phenomenal that we've gotten the support of the community and the researchers to get this much done, and it is very much appreciated. We look forward to seeing you at the race in June, which of course is our big event and a lot of fun, and at these smaller events that now take place through the year, just like this beer tasting. And I'd like to thank Scott for moving the Also Thanks beer, which is 10.5%, to the end, so that I'm actually capable of giving this report. I hope you all have a good evening. And again, thank you for your support.
All right, that's amazing. That's an incredible numbers. I had no idea. And yeah, we did make a program change to switch this one to the end. It's a heavy hitter, so we figured we'd finish with this one and let everyone be a little bit more coherent through the tail end of the call. But it's also a flavor escalation too. Typically, higher alcohol means a stronger flavor. So if you're doing a beer tasting at home, that'd probably be the direction you'd want to go from low to high. But there's exceptions to that. You know, I wanted to do the porter after the IPA because why not? So this beer is Also Thanks. We brew a beer called Gratitude, and we've been doing it since our very first year. Gratitude was our, hey, we survived the first year as a business, and this is our thank you beer that we put out. Over the years, that Gratitude barley wine release has become a big thing for us. We've had as many as 100 people standing in line outside the door of the brewery, waiting to get a hold of their Gratitude. And we've done various versions of Gratitude over the years. Last year, we released our regular Gratitude barley wine, which is like an 11.5% beer, as well as a bourbon barrel aged version, a rye whiskey barrel aged version, and a Scotch whiskey barrel aged version. And then the other thing that we threw in was an Also Thanks, because of the last couple of years that everyone's been enduring. We've seen just absolutely incredible support for our little little brewery throughout the pandemic. We managed to get through the entire pandemic without having to lay off any staff. We kept everybody employed through the entire thing. Somehow, maybe doing different things than they were hired to do. So maybe doing a little painting instead of doing some bartending. But we turned our Saturday bartenders into home delivery drivers, and we got as creative as we could to make sure that everybody that needed to still was able to continue to have employment with us throughout the whole lockdown. So this was our extra beer that we threw into the gratitude release day, called Also Thanks. It's a wheat wine. Neither of the barley wine nor the wheat wine are wine. They are beers through and through. But because of the process steps and the higher alcohol and the way that they're made, they have this long heritage. The barley wine is from a centuries old English tradition, and wheat wine is a newer version of that. But as you might imagine, brewed with a bit more wheat than barley. So this is our Also Thanks. So Also Thanks. The neat part about these beers is they can actually age. So you could put this one away for a couple of years and the flavor is going to shift on it. Whereas the Central Oakland or the Kolsch, those are beers that are best drank fresh. But this is that one exception to most beer styles. The big heavy hitters, sometimes you can, depending upon what they are, you can save them for a little bit.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. I guess everyone loves this beer in particular too. I had a quick question about the artwork on this one. The other ones are pretty self-explanatory, but I couldn't really quite figure out what this is. I mean, other than the wheat, obviously, but
yeah. So this is a little bit of an inside. So we have we brewed a beer years ago that is was a Weizenbock. Which was a big, again, about 10%. And that beer was called Monkey's Uncle. And the monkey that was on the label was, he was smoking a pipe and he was wearing a fez. The difference between a Weizenbock and this beer is only really one thing. It's a different yeast strain. So we put a little fez on here just as a nod to people that knew the beer from, gosh, 10 years ago. But it's probably a reference that's maybe only rings true for a handful of people
okay.
that are going to drink the beer. Yeah, I'm more fezzes in the world is always a good thing, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was, but I couldn't quite get that into the picture. But yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right. Also thanks, I guess. Yeah. All right. Just seeing if any more questions pop up in the chat here. One thing that came up to remind everyone, you do not have to drink all of your beers, especially if you're only by yourself. Today, at least, you should drink it, but not all in one. You can cover your beer. Yeah.
Take mine downstairs and share them with the rest of the household. So.
Yeah. So just cover the can or the glass with a plastic wrap and a rubber band and put it in the fridge for tomorrow. Okay. Any more questions or suggestions for our speakers and survivors, brewmasters? Just put them in the chat or unmute yourself. You can just say something. If this is not the case, then I guess we close this event up with just a few notes of thanks. Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be the MC today. But of course, also thank you all for joining us tonight, and a very special thanks goes obviously to Lynn for being our survivor, and Scott and the whole East End Brewing Company for providing the beer and having them taste with us. Also, thank you to all the medical teams out there. I saw a few, especially Dr. Burgess and Dr. Holtzman, who have the special connection to our survivor, Lynn. Thank you again, all the volunteers that who supported us today, and special thanks to Anya's Army for the goldfish. Just to close up now, some of you may be wondering how you can help us to continue fight sarcoma, and especially if you're a survivor or lost a loved one, or just support the cause, why don't you think about joining the fundraiser event, the race next year? Please create a team and participate in our Run, Walk, Whatever event. That will be next year, June 24th at the North Park Boathouse. As those know that have participated, it's a super event. It's a really fun, and yeah, you can even exercise and do the run. Please invite your family, friends to support our cause, and the registration for the race will open in spring 2023. We may even have another beer tasting before that, I'm not sure. Anyway, please stay in touch, like and follow us on social media. We have a Facebook page, we are on Instagram. Shout out again one more time to the Pittsburgh Sarcoma Research Collaborative. This is clinicians, medical doctors, surgeons, translational researchers, basic researchers all over the city at UPMC and Allegheny Health Network that have come together to further the research on sarcoma. We also have a Twitter account, so please feel free to join us there. And most links also you can find in your agenda, probably everything about the Pittsburgh Sarcoma Research Collaborative. So with that, have a good night and enjoy the rest of your beers. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Scott, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So I'm in the South Side neighborhood. So first off, South Side Slips, what beer would that be?
We did Southside Slopes. That was a we did tried out some new, because these neighborhood beer series, this is kind of our laboratory.
Okay.
We tried a new process step and we brewed a low calorie IPA. So we actually introduced an enzyme into the brewing process that basically made all of the sugar in the beer fermentable. So we actually had it lab tested, and it's, I think, like 105 calories in a 16-ounce can. So,
wow.
So yeah, we did a low cal IPA. For those of you who are looking to trim some calories, we still got a little bit of that one left.
Well, unfortunately, I'm a $170. I need to put on some pounds, so I'm looking for the heavy hitters. But thank you. I'll try. Well,
stick to the also thanks. This is I'm betting this is probably like 500 calories or something.
Well, I like that. Yeah.
It's a pretty dense beer.
That's a protein bar, a meal replacement too.
Exactly, right.
And then the second question I had was East End Brewing, the beer. Do you do a lot of sales to local beer distributors, or where can I pick up this beer at?
Well, of course, the best place is to come see us at the brewery, because that's where you're going to get the widest selection and the freshest selection of everything that we do. We usually have at least 12 to 15 different beers in cans ready to go. But we also distribute throughout Allegheny County. We get a little bit of beer that leaves the county, but really in the 18 years that we've been operating, we've not changed our distribution footprint. All of our growth from when it was just me in a building, in an unmarked building in Homewood making beer, to where we are now with a staff of roughly 20 people, pizza and beer makers. We really haven't changed the way we distribute beer in all of that time. So all that growth has happened locally. Thanks,
That's
Duke.
awesome, man. And it seems like you know your stuff, and we got a good one with you because you've been in this business for over 15, 20 years, you said. So you're an OG.
Yeah, I think that means old guy, right?
Not what I meant, no.
Feels that way. Feels that way sometimes. Well, thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely, man. We'll be seeing you soon.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
So I have a question. This may be a very naive question. Because this is such a smaller can, is it because of the alcohol content or is it for some other reason?
We that's a great question. We are about half of our beers are that we package go into 12-ounce cans, and about half goes into 16-ounce cans. The barley wine that I was talking about before, and even the barrel-aged version of the barley wine, we were putting those in 16-ounce cans for a few years. But that's a lot of high alcohol beer for one sitting. So last year we made the change and we switched all of those beers as well as the Also Thanks into the smaller can, because it's a little more manageable. Which is funny because nobody complained about the portion size when we were putting them in 750 ml bottles. That was that was a completely different era back when beer in bottles was common, but now everything is cans. But yeah, definitely related to the alcohol and making sure that it's a manageable package for you. Any other questions from anybody? I'll take pizza questions, beer questions.
What's next on your agenda?
Next on the agenda, what I've been spending all my time on, I live in Mount Lebanon, and have for, gosh, about 10 years now. We are working on opening a tap room in Mount Lebanon. And so we're hoping to have that open before the end of this year. And I'm running out of time for that to be an accurate statement as we wind down in the calendar year. But it's right across the street from the saloon, if you know the South Hills at all. It's also right on the T stop, which is handy for people that want to have a beer and don't want to get behind the wheel. But we're planning on about an 80-seat tap room with our probably 15 to 18 beers on tap, as well as our thick crust pizza. Oh, there you are. We have a display of a couple of our pizzas there. So the one with the pint glass next to it, that's actually a pizza we did so we do as we like to say, you can have any kind of pizza that you want as long as it's one of the 3 kinds on the menu. So we keep a cheese pizza, a pepperoni pizza, and a pizza of the week that changes every week. So the one next to the pint glass was the pizza that we did for Pittsburgh, and so that week it was a fish and chips pizza, which is a little hard to picture, which is why there's a picture there. And the other is, I believe, that's one of our more recent pizza of the week. That might be the moussaka pizza. We've done our kitchen manager Cheryl is spectacular. She makes a banh mi pizza, a wedding soup pizza, jalapeno popper pizza, and we actually even did a pumpkin spice latte pizza. Yeah, I kind of had the same reaction, but then I had the pizza and I changed my mind.
Okay, there's another question in the chat actually. Sorry, I need the answer to that one. If you brew beer in a turkey fryer on the weekends, like Jen Landau's dad.
I used to brew beer on my kitchen stove. I was doing that for about 9 years before I got bigger equipment. Yeah, the scale of home brewing that I did, I was able to cook it with the stove capability. If you go up to like a 10-gallon or a 15-gallon batch size, you need to upgrade to a turkey fryer.
Scott, I gotta ask you, what does Mount Lebanon East End beer taste like? And after you answer that, how would you augment that with Upper St. Clair? How would it different? How would Mount Lebanon's beer
Well,
versus Upper St. Clair's?
you're stirring the pot, aren't you?
I am.
I don't know. We're gonna have to see. I think Mount Lebanon might be one of the first municipality series beers that we do, given the presence in Mount Lebanon. But I'm open to suggestions. If you've got, I don't know, does it taste like a mix of Rollier's Hardware and I'm not sure. Bird Park. I don't like. We'll have to see. But our phone lines are open, as they say.
There'll be a I can feel the rivalry brewing right now. Brewing. How about that, everybody? Brewing.
All right, maybe one more question just for everyone, because I feel that concerns everyone. We got the question asked, how many kinds of sarcomas are there? I was not fast enough typing. Dr. Burgess already answered that. But essentially, as we know more and more about sarcomas, not only with respect to pathological staining, but also how about their genetic makeup, we can distinguish more and more types of sarcoma. And so right now we are at 175. Just a few years ago, it was just 50. And that's a number that is still oftentimes used from some people talking about sarcoma, but the numbers are going up.
Wow.
Which means in each category there's less. So if you want to do clinical trials that are specific for one sarcoma subtype, that's getting a little bit more difficult each time. All right. I guess if there's no more questions, then we can close shop here and wish everyone a good night.
Thank you, Annette.
For joining. Hi,
Thank
Joe.
you, Annette. Good night,
Thanks,
all.
Scott.
Good night.
So much for hosting us. Annette.
Thank you, Scott.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Scott. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Mar.
Bye,
and
guys.
Josh.